What's up, guys? Coach Nate here, owner at Steel Strength Training. This is my most complete video on fat loss that I have ever done. We're going to take you guys from start to finish of how to have a successful diet and the pitfalls to avoid along the way. I've been helping clients lose fat for the last 12 years since I became a personal trainer. I have gone through my own fat loss cycles. I'm in one currently, which is why this is very much top of mind. I've lost 31 pounds and counting this year. Gonna get back to the leanest physique I have had in a long time, probably about 12 years. So anyway, fat loss is on my mind, so I want to share everything that I've ever learned over the last 12 years to help you have the easiest, simplest, most successful fat loss journey as whenever you're ready to take that journey. So my own story, I was always pretty lean growing up, and I did some, the bulking and cutting early on in my fitness journey, in my late teens into my early to mid 20s. But then I started dealing with my crazy health issues from mold and other environmental toxins that were affecting every bodily system. I got very, very sick, ended up bedbound 2 different times. I'm not going into the details on that. The only reason this is relevant, though, is during one of the times where I ended up bedbound 2023, I gained a bunch of weight. I had not been able to train. I could not tolerate exercise at all, spending all day in bed. I got fat. I was sick. I was weak. And so I was starting off from a really heavy point. So finally, I was able to start doing some training again last year, which is awesome. Which actually I regained some of the muscle mass that I'd lost. So I actually gained up to my heaviest weight ever. I got up to 260 pounds. So I'm back down to 229. This is the leanest that I have been since probably 2019, and there's no signs that this is going to slow down. So I'll keep you guys updated on that progress for those that care. But I'm practicing what I preach, and while I used to think it was unfortunate that I ended up in the situation I was in, carrying around so much fat. I felt like I had to be the fattest gym owner in Birmingham. But I'm thankful for it. I'm thankful for the way that God has ordered my steps, because I know what it's like for our clients who want to lose 30, 40, 50 pounds, right? Clients who have to start from scratch and rebuild, and they're out of shape. And I got to walk that journey. I'm in the process of still walking that out. So I'm thankful for it. Anyway, that's my own story. Right now, again, fat loss is on the top of my mind. So you're going to get a really good video here. I want to talk about mindset. Mindset is key. So first, let's talk about timeline, then we'll talk about patience. All right. Regardless of whether you need to lose 10 pounds, 20 pounds, 30 pounds, 40, 50, 75, 100 or more, I want to encourage you with this, okay? Even if you're on the older end, let's say you're one of our older clients, let's say you're 75. Well, Lord willing, you're going to live for many years to come, all right? Love to see you live another couple decades or more. So even if you're on the oldest end of our spectrum of clients that we work with, look, if it takes you 2 years instead of 1 year, but you actually get it off, like, you have many years left of your life. So don't get too hung up on the timeline. Yes, we want to go as fast as we possibly can, as long as it's practical, enjoyable, and sustainable. The reason so many people stay overweight is they start plans and they want those plans to go as fast as possible. And I understand that's human nature. I've done that with my strength training, done that with fat loss. I've done it in my business. But every time I prioritize speed over everything else, the wheels fall off and it leaves me in a bad situation. Okay? And I've seen this hundreds and hundreds of times with clients. Don't let that be you. All right? So we want to go as quickly as we can with a plan that's sustainable. So don't be too hung up on your timeline. I can pretty much guarantee you it is not going to happen as fast as you want. I repeat, it is not going to happen as fast as you want. The end result is going to be better than you can imagine, but it's going to take longer than you want. And the sooner you get that through your head, the more successful you're going to be. All right, that's number one. Which brings me to point number two, which is patience. Okay? Let's get you on a plan that's getting you results. But again, if it's going to take you 6 months versus 3 months, 2 years versus 1 year, so be it. We'll do everything we can to try to get it on the shorter end of the time frame. But the most important thing is that we get you there so that for the rest of your life, years, decades to come, you're at a new, low, healthy body weight and you're happy with your physique. All right? So the end result's going to be better than you can ever imagine. You're capable of achieving far more than you think. That's true for 99.9% of you watching this. And what's also true is it's going to take you longer than you want it to. Maybe twice as long, maybe more. Accept that. And you will see faster progress than you've ever seen in your life because you'll actually be able to keep it. Kind of like the tortoise and the hare. All right, now to set actual expectations, let's talk numbers. I like numbers because numbers don't lie. So the maximum amount of weight that you want to lose, that you can lose safely per week, is 1% of your body weight. Which means if you're, for me, when I started out, 260 pounds, that means I could lose 2.6 pounds per week. Now, I definitely was not losing that fast. I say this, that's the max. If you start losing more than that, it's almost certainly, it's just like not healthy, not a good idea, okay? And the calorie deficit, which we're going to talk about calorie deficits here in a second, the calorie deficit you would have to create in order to hit that would be very, very large. And you're probably almost certainly going to feel like garbage doing it. So 1% is the absolute max weight loss per week that I recommend. On the lower end, I would say you want to make sure you're losing at least 0.25% of your body weight per week, just because you're going to drive yourself crazy if you don't. So if you're, much slower than that, it's like you might as well put in a little more effort, create a little bit bigger of a calorie deficit. It's not going to make that much of a difference to you, but psychologically, while I'm preaching patience, we want wins, okay? And if you're consistently winning, even if those wins don't happen as fast as you want, that's where you just need to grow up and deal with it. It's going to be okay. You're going to get there sooner rather than later. And once the journey's done, you're going to be like, man, I'm glad I did that. I'm glad I locked in. I'm glad I was patient. But there is some level where it's like you got to be losing at least a little bit, right, consistently, or you're just going to get frustrated and quit. So 0.25% is the lowest end, while you can technically lose less than that. From a psychological perspective, 0.25% of your body weight per week is the lowest end I would recommend. So let's take someone who's 200 pounds on both. On the high end, no more than 2 pounds a week. On the low end, that's going to be half a pound per week. I think for most people, 0.25 to 0.5% is ideal. In my case, I've been losing about 5 pounds per month. That is roughly 0.5%. Okay. That's a pace that I feel really good about. And I'm seeing changes regularly, right? I'm winning enough that it's keeping me motivated, but also it's not so aggressive. I feel good. I feel good on my deficit. More on that in a minute. But yeah, those are the expectations. 1% of your body weight to 0.25%. Okay, most people probably need to be about 0.5%. Now, there are 3 general approaches we can take with fat loss. And it's really a spectrum here, okay? But on this end, we've got slow and steady. And then right here, you've got the middle ground is more of moderately aggressive. And then on this end, it's extremely aggressive. I think there are pros and cons to each of these. So let's talk about each of these. The slow and steady, the nice thing is you have the slowest calorie deficit, meaning compared to a moderately aggressive and a very aggressive approach, you get to eat more food, which is nice. You're more full. You probably have more energy. You feel better. That's a plus. The downside is it's going to take a lot longer. If you're super, super aggressive, you're aiming for that 1%. Well, psychologically, you're losing weight fast, you're winning. All those wins build up. It's exciting to see the changes happening rapidly, but you're probably you have to be eating in a very large calorie deficit. So you're probably hungry, you might feel bad, your energy might be low, whatever. Then the middle ground approach, right, is like Goldilocks and the 3 Bears, not too cold, not too hot, just right, perfect. This is my preference. They all work, and we've had clients do all three of them. So one way is not inherently better than the other. The middle ground approach, I would call it moderately aggressive. And this is where you're losing weight at a pace that's fast enough for you to be encouraged, but it's also not so aggressive that you're like starving yourself. All right, and you're miserable, you're cranky, you're hungry. Okay. My general approach for figuring out where you need to be on the spectrum is let's be as aggressive as we possibly can be. Let's help you lose as much weight as fast as possible with a plan that is still practical, enjoyable, and sustainable. Meaning, how low can we get your calories while still making sure you're not ravenous all the time? You feel totally fine dealing with any hunger that you're dealing with. It's not affecting you in any way, and your energy levels are really good. Okay? That's the sweet spot that we want to get you to. For some, that is going to be very fast. Some people do feel they can cut their calories really low and they feel great. Perfect. Do it. Others are only going to be able to handle a mild deficit, and that's totally fine as well. I think the key is you want to be as aggressive as possible. You want to cut your calories as low as you can without suffering, basically. You want to still feel great. And that's what I've done. I've settled on about 5 pounds per month, about 1.25 pounds per week is being lost. And at that pace, I'm seeing lots of wins. It's awesome. I'm seeing my body change. I'm feeling the changes happening. And I feel great. There's a little bit of hunger, but I'm not starving. I'm not ravenous. My energy levels are fantastic. That's the sweet spot that you want to aim for, as aggressive as possible while still feeling great. All right, now I want to talk to you about the 5 nutrition principles for fat loss. These are like the 5 rules that you have to follow. If you don't follow these rules, you're not going to get the results that you want. And if you follow these rules, then you can use any kind of tactic that you want. So the 5 nutrition principles are: number 1, eat mostly real food. Eat the right amount of calories for your goal. Eat the right amount of protein for your goal. Don't eat foods that make you feel bad, and eat in a way that you enjoy. Enjoy your diet. So eat mostly real foods. Look, you're not going to go wrong eating single ingredient, God made it himself foods. Meat, fish, eggs, dairy, vegetables, fruit, nuts, seeds, potatoes, etc. Okay? If a food engineer made it, I'm not saying don't eat it, but that should make up, little to none of your diet. So eat mostly real foods, right? They're going to keep you full, give you energy, they're healthy for you, all the things. Number 2, eat the right amount of calories for your goal. Calories in, calories out matter, period. All right? So this is one of the things, if, a lot of people are like, Nate, I don't understand. I eat really healthy, but I'm not losing weight. Well, eating healthy has a different definition for every single person that I talk to. And I've heard this line literally hundreds, if not thousands of times over the last decade. And the thing is, first of all, people say they eat healthy, and then you look at their diet and it's like, your food choices are honestly pretty bad. So that's something we run into. But sometimes people are actually eating really good. They're eating mostly single ingredient foods. They eat really well, but they're just eating too many calories. And here's the deal. For weight loss, yes, you should eat healthy. Those foods are, they're going to promote health long term, keep you full, give you energy. They're lower in calories, higher in protein, etc. So yeah, you want to eat mostly real foods. There should be a lot of overlap, but my little Venn diagram here, overlap between eating healthy and losing weight, but they are not the same thing. So many people eat healthy, but they're not losing weight because their calories are too high. And there are people, you could literally eat, they've done experiments on this, you can eat McDonald's every meal. I'm not recommending this, but you can eat McDonald's every meal. As long as you're in a calorie deficit, you're going to lose weight, period. Okay? Now, it's going to be harder to eat McDonald's every meal, and I don't really think it's that healthy for you. But it just drives home the point that when it comes to weight loss, calories in, calories out is everything. Okay? All right, rant over. So you got to be in a calorie deficit. A calorie deficit just means however many calories you need to maintain your weight, whether that's 2,000, 2,500, 3,000, whatever, calories per day to maintain your weight, you have to be eating less than that. Now, you can create that calorie deficit through diet by eating less, or you can create that calorie deficit through exercise or a combination of the two. You pretty much, you pretty much have to create the calorie deficit. If you're an everyday man or woman, you're not training like for some crazy whatever. You're not running hours every day. You're not playing a sport for hours every day. If you're just an everyday man or woman like me, like all of our clients, you're gonna have to reduce your calorie intake through that you're eating. Okay. You cannot out train a bad diet. You cannot do enough. The amount of cardio that you're gonna have to do to lose fat just from exercise is very high. Okay, so just assume if you're watching this video, you're gonna have to create a calorie deficit through just reducing your food intake. Okay. My advice is look at strength training, look at walking. You do them for your health. You do them so you maintain and build muscle as you lose weight. It's good for your health. It's going to give you the lean, tone, defined look that you want. Being strong is a good idea. Building muscle is a good idea. It looks good, but like it's going to help you feel good, perform well, be healthy, have energy, etc. But look at exercise for the benefits that it offers. And yes, there's a calorie burn there, but don't do it primarily for the calorie burn. And don't even think about the calorie burn when you're training, okay? When you're walking, when you're lifting, do those things for the health benefits. You're losing fat. 99% of that fat loss is being driven by your diet. Okay, so you got to create a calorie deficit. Next is protein. How much protein should you eat? The optimal, like if you check this box, you're getting almost, if not all of the benefits that you need from protein. You can build an incredibly healthy and great looking physique with the most I would recommend is 0.8 grams per pound of your goal body weight. So, your goal body weight is how lean do you want to be? And really, I'm calculating this off of a very lean physique. So like a physique where you've got a six pack, very clear ab muscles, right? So like very, very lean. Most of our clients are not trying to get that lean, which means that whatever their goal body weight is, they probably only need like 0.6 to 0.7 grams per pound of body weight. So I'm not the biggest guy in the world by any means, but I'm a fairly big guy. And so I don't know where exactly I'm going to end up with my weight, but let's say that my goal weight at a very, very lean physique, let's just call it 200 pounds, okay? I don't know that I'm going to go that low, but let's just call it that, okay? That would put me at 0.8 grams per pound. That would put me at 160 grams of protein. For 99% of people watching this, like you're probably not going to need more protein than that in a day. Now, I'm not saying there's harm to eating more protein than that. There's not. But with protein, my opinion is we want to make sure we're getting enough protein to maintain muscle mass or build muscle while we're losing weight. And then the rest, personally, my personal preference and the preference of most of my clients is to, like, I'd rather eat 160 grams of protein and then eat more, let's say, instead of 240 grams of protein, I'd rather eat 160 and then take that extra 80 grams of protein and eat 80 grams more of carbs. Like, that's going to give me more energy. I'm going to feel better doing that than eating the extra protein, okay? And look, I gave the example. I don't know if I made this point clear enough. I gave the example of my own protein intake, saying that obviously if you're a guy with more muscle mass than me, and there's plenty of them out there, lots and lots of them out there, then yeah, you would need more protein than me. But my point is, if you're an everyday man or woman and you just want to generally build a lean, strong, and healthy physique, my guess is you're probably not going to need more protein than what I'm consuming. And so I think that anyway, but use those calculations. Like if you're trying to get really lean, like you really want a super lean, six pack, physique, then 0.8 grams per pound of your goal weight, your target weight, whatever weight you think you need to be at to get to that physique. And it's probably lower than you think. Use 0.8 grams per pound of body weight. For everybody else, you could use 0.6, 0.7 grams for your goal weight. Okay. If your goal weight is I just want to be reasonably lean and healthy, but I'm not trying to get, shredded. Perfect. That's how most of our clients are. 0.6 to 0.7 grams per pound of your goal body weight. And I'll say this, for those that struggle to get enough protein, here's some like general recommendations for women and then for men. So for women, if you're like, we talked to some women who are like barely getting 30 to 40 grams a day. Okay, like a good amount. If you get 60 a day, that's pretty good. It's not optimal, but that's good. If you've been eating 30 to 40, bumping to 60, very good for your health. Bump it to 80, even better. Bump it to 100, really, really good. And you're probably pretty close to optimal at that point. But then, you want to go one step further, do the 0.8 grams per pound of goal body weight. For men, same thing. If you're struggling to get enough protein, 80 grams, that's solid. If we can get you to 100, even better. 120, even better for most guys. That's going to put you close to the optimal range. And then, of course, if you want to take it a step further and get, the truly optimal amount, 0.8 grams per pound of goal body weight. So got to create a calorie deficit. That's how you hit your protein intake. Okay, so I want to talk about some other tactics, right? People bring up things like, well, how many meals per day should I eat? When should I eat those meals? Like what time of day? It doesn't matter. If you're eating mostly real foods, you've got the right amount of calories for your goal, whether you're tracking or not, and you're hitting the right amount of protein, then it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter when you're eating your meals or how many meals per day that you eat, okay? Start with 3 meals a day, 4 meals a day, because that's what most people do, or 3 meals and a snack, and then experiment from there. And meal timing, like, again, doesn't matter. Pick the times that allow you to eat mostly real food, hit the right amount of calories for your goal, hit the right amount of protein. Things like intermittent fasting, low carb, lower fat, like, vegetarian, vegan, keto, carnivore, paleo, whatever. Look, they're tactics. They're tactics. So, they're going to work for some and not work for others. So, and look, some tactics are going to work well for you in some seasons of life. And then in another season of life, in a different fat loss phase, you're going to have to use different tactics. So don't get married to the tactics. Be married to the principles. Eat mostly real food, eat the right amount of calories for your goal, eat the right amount of protein for your goal. Within that framework, play around with the foods that you eat. Do you like a lower fat, higher carb approach? Do you like a more balanced approach? Do you like a lower carb, higher fat approach? Do you like intermittent fasting? Do you like to eat late at night? Do you like to, skip breakfast? Do you, whatever. Play around with those things. But as soon as people start telling you, oh, you got to do this, BS. BS, I promise you. The only thing that matters are these principles. They're like the guardrails of the highway, or they're like an umbrella. And as long as the tactics you're choosing fall under the umbrella, fall in the guardrails of the highway, you're going to get great results. So don't get hung up on the tactics. Only be married to the tactics that help you. And as soon as a tactic stops helping you, let it go. Find something else. Okay. So in terms of tracking your food, I think you can lose fat without tracking for sure. But I think if you have never tracked calories and protein, and there's no maybe mental health reason, or if you have a history of eating disorder, I would be cautious about recommending somebody track at that point. Something for you to think through. Ultimately, of course, that's your decision to make. But if you don't have a history of disordered eating, anything like that, my advice, strongly advise you to track your calories at some point in your life. And the reason is that you don't know what you don't know. Everybody learns something. Most people learn a lot when they first start tracking calories because they're shocked to learn, oh, this food I thought was healthy is actually super full of calories. They also learn things like, oh, I can eat a little bit of ice cream. Looking at me. I can eat a little bit of ice cream every night and still hit my goals. Yeah, if you are totally clueless on calories, 10 out of 10 would recommend that you track. There's a learning curve. It's going to be frustrating and annoying, and you're going to be spending 20, maybe 30 minutes a day as you're learning this new skill. It's like learning a new skill. It's like learning to ride a bike or any other skill you've ever learned. It's going to take time. You're going to suck at it at first. It's going to be frustrating, but you'll get it figured out, and then it's much, much, much faster. But you learn a lot. So I would highly recommend tracking. If you track your calories and protein, you're good to go. And as long as you're getting a little bit of fat, then everything from there, like you definitely don't want to go like zero fat. Not a good idea. It's almost impossible to do though. But as long as you're getting a little bit of fat, then as you know, hit your calorie and protein goal. I don't care what's happening with your carbs and fat. That is where you want to experiment with and see like what do I feel best doing, which one works the best for me, etc. Okay. Once you've tracked, I think that the best solution long term is, so a lot of people are like, should I track or should I do like a meal plan where it's like you just tell me exactly what to eat? I don't like giving people meal plans because then once they hit their goal, we're going to talk about switching to maintenance here soon, but once they hit their goal, then they're kind of like, I don't know what to do now, right? So I think tracking teaches you to think for yourself a little bit, and that's going to be an important skill in helping you like maintain your results. Is that not just that you got the results, but that you learned why you were getting the results and what worked and what didn't work along the way. That's another problem. People will do diets and they work and they're even sustainable and enjoyable for people, but then once they get to maintenance, they don't know why they saw results in the first place. So fat loss is just seen as this like, people are very confused about fat loss. They're like, my friend did keto and lost a bunch of weight and then I did it and it didn't work. Or there's so much confusion around fat loss, and that's why you've got to understand the principles. When you understand the principles, it clears up everything. Again, the principles, I'm going to belabor this point. The principles being eat mostly real food, eat the right amount of calories for your goals, eat the right amount of protein for your goal. If you do that, and then you don't eat foods that make you feel bad, and you eat foods that you enjoy, so you enjoy your diet, you're going to see great results. And there's all kinds of tactics you can use. So I don't recommend meal plans. I don't recommend tracking long, like forever either, though you can if you want. My advice is track, get an idea of like, okay, here's my calorie goal, here's what I'm trying to hit. And then from there, look like find, 4 to 5, more if you need more variety, less if you're more robotic like myself. Find 4 to 5 meals that you can rotate between from meal to meal, and like it generally has this amount of calories, this much protein, and if you eat XYZ in a day, you're gonna hit your calorie deficit. That's where like I'm at right now, where my fat loss, I'll still enter it into MyFitnessPal every once in a while, just to double check and make sure I'm on the right track. But I'm eating roughly the same thing or rotating between the same few things every day. So I wake up and I know like I'm in a calorie deficit, so I don't have anything to worry about. Yeah, so putting together those like 3 to 4 staple meals is going to be a really big game changer for you. It's going to help you out a lot. It's going to make your life simpler. So you're almost like alternating between a tracking and a meal plan. All right. All right. In terms of tracking your food, I like MyFitnessPal, but there's a lot of different apps out there that you can use. So you just got to figure out one that you like. We recommend MyFitnessPal to our clients, but there's a lot of good options out there. In terms of calculating your maintenance calories, I go to this place called BMI. I'll put it in the link in the description. It's like BMI.BMR calculator or something like that. BMR calculator. And you enter your age, height, and weight. And then it'll spit out your BMR, your basal metabolic rate, which this is like if you were in a coma, you're just lying on the couch all day. This is how many calories you would burn just existing. That's where most of our calorie burn comes from. The rest comes from, 70%, basically, a lot of it, 60-70% is coming from that basal metabolic rate, just your basic function to keep you, alive. And then a little bit is going to come from exercise and just activity throughout the day. And then a very small amount comes from digestion. So anyway, you're going to plug in your age, height, and weight on that calculator. And then it's going to ask for an activity multiplier. So, or it'll give you an activity multiplier saying like, are you very active? Are you active? Are you lightly active? Are you sedentary? For most of our clients, if you're working out, you're lifting weights 2 to 4 days a week and you're walking 6 to 10,000 steps per day, you're going to be anywhere from between lightly active to like moderately or just active, lightly active to active, or lightly active to moderately active. When in doubt, I would recommend starting with the lower activity level if you're not sure, just to ensure that like you're erring on the side of lower calories, and then you can always bump it up from there. And then from there, once you have, so it'll give you your BMR, and then it'll spit out, hey, if you're sedentary, here's your daily intake, or here's your daily maintenance calories. You're lightly active, this is what it looks like. You're So anyway, the way that you calculate your calorie deficit, let's say you're lightly active, it says it puts you at 2,300 calories per day. All right, quick math. In 1 pound of fat, there are 3,500 calories, which means if we want to lose 1 pound of fat per week, we have to burn or be in a 3,500 calorie deficit for the week. You divide 3,500 by 7, that's 500 calories. You want to be in a 500 calorie deficit per day, meaning if your maintenance calories are 2,300, you have to subtract 500 from that. That puts you at 1,800 calories. So if you eat 1,800 calories, in theory, you're going to lose 1 pound per week. These calculators are pretty accurate, but every individual is different. So it's going to be plus or minus a little bit. And then basically just keep hammering, be consistent, hit your, so if you want to do half pound per week, take your maintenance calories, drop it by 250. So if 2,300 is your maintenance calories, then you subtract 250, 2,050, 2,050 calories is going to put you at losing half a pound per week. You want to lose a pound, take 500 off. 2,300 minus 500, 1,800. You want to lose a pound and a half. That you take off 750, so that would be 1,550, I believe, would be your calorie intake. So that's how you calculate that, all right? Basically, 500 calorie deficit to lose a pound, 250 calorie deficit to lose half pound per week, 750 calorie deficit to lose 1.5 pounds, 1,000 calorie deficit to lose 2 pounds, 1,250 to lose 2.5 pounds, etc. And then just what you're going to do is you're going to start hammering away at that calorie deficit. You're just hitting that number over and over. Say you settle on 1,800, you're going to do a pound per week. 1,800, 1,800, 1,800, 1,800. You do it every day, okay? Try to get really close to it, especially early on, because what that's going to do, not only is it going to get you results, but if you're consistent with your calorie intake, and we're going to talk about how we track progress here. If you're consistent with your calorie intake, then you'll be able to know like what your true maintenance calories are based on the progress that you're seeing. So how do we track progress? Two main ways, maybe a third way I'll toss in. Pictures, checking the scale daily. That's my favorite, but pictures as well. And then just how your clothes fit. So how your clothes fit, that's just something you're going to notice. Or compliments from friends, kind of a subjective thing there. But those are things you can pay attention to, how your clothes fit and compliments from friends. But the main things you want to look at are pictures and the scale. The scale is the most important. Now, early on, I used to tell people, don't weigh. It's going to stress you out. Don't worry about the weight on the scale. Well, I've changed my mind. Again, as long as you don't have a history of disordered eating, I actually like it when people get on the scale for a couple of reasons. Number one, they've just showed that when you weigh daily, it is that in and of itself, dietary changes aside, is very motivating. Like when you're getting that feedback daily, it's very motivating to eat a little bit better, maybe eat a few less calories. So one, it's just kind of a motivator. Number two, the more data we can get to a point, the more accurate decisions we can make. So I like to see people hopping on the scale every day. And I've had days where I've missed, but I've basically tracked my weight from January 1st when I was about 260 to this morning, 229.2. I track like every day. Got a note on my phone, just boom, put the weight on there. And here's the thing. Weighing every day, it's going to stress you out in the beginning, probably, especially if you have an emotional relationship with the scale. But what it does, if you're hammering away at your calories, you know your calorie intake, and you're seeing the scale, we're collecting data daily, but we're really looking for what's happening over the course of like weeks and months. Really, we're looking at like a 1 to 3 week time frame. That's how we really gauge, like, are you seeing progress or not? We've all seen this, right? Like you start a diet and the scale dips like a lot in the first week, and you're not losing much fat, you're losing a little bit, but it's really just because like you're eating less. So there's fewer carbs and there's less salt and there's less just food overall sitting in your stomach. And so your body, like, salt and extra food in your stomach and carbs all cause you to retain water. So if you have less of those, you're kind of flushing some water out. So you lose water weight in that first week. And yes, if you're in a calorie deficit, you are losing fat. But, someone might lose 4 pounds on the scale in week 1 of a diet, and really only 1 pound of those 4 pounds was like legitimate fat loss, right? If they bump their calories back up to what they were, then they're going to be back at, they're going to go up 3 pounds on the scale. So, yeah, the first week, I basically, once you start a diet, the first week, whatever happens in the first week, I basically just ignore. And what you are at the end of the first week, that's like your new baseline. Okay. Because you flushed all the water weight out and all that stuff. Now you're locked in. You've lost 2, 3, 4, 5 pounds on the scale. And now the changes you see week to week from here are going to be much more honest about what's actually happening with your fat loss. Quick note too, this is why when people do something like keto, they do low carb, they see a lot of weight lost. Like a ton of weight drops off in the first week. It's not that keto causes more fat loss, it's still coming down to the calorie deficit. And if keto helps you stay in a calorie deficit, that's great. But it's not that keto is actually superior. It's that you are reducing carbs super low, okay? And for every gram of carb you store about 3 grams of water. So we cut our water down, and now you're flushing out a ton of water, even more so than somebody who's just, maybe reducing their portions, but still keeping their carbs at a moderate intake. So anyway, that's why we see a big fluctuation, big drop in that first week of low carb diets. They're not actually superior. Let's see. And so look, you're going to see lots of fluctuations day to day on the scale too. There's so many things that affect the scale, right? The water fluctuations are crazy. I mean, just did you eat a little bit more food? Even if the food is the same amount of calories, was the food, did it have more volume? Did it weigh more, right? Like different foods are more calorie dense than others. So like you might have eaten a ton of vegetables the day before, and yeah, your calories were still the same, but you've got literally more mass, more food that your body's processing. Maybe you're a little bloated, right? So like there's all kinds of like hormonal things that can cause that. Women are going to be impacted by this even more just due to their hormonal changes throughout the month. So you're going to see a lot of fluctuations. So for women especially, we have to really draw out that time horizon even farther. It's not that the calorie deficit still works the exact same for women as it does for men, but women tend to have a lot more water weight fluctuations. So we have to take that into account when we're tracking progress. So here's we want to track daily, but we don't want to freak out if we're like, oh, the scale hasn't moved all week, the scale hasn't moved for 10 days, or I'm up or whatever. We don't want to make rash decisions based on day-to-day fluctuations. That's why I have what I call the 2-week rule. And sometimes it's really like a 3-week rule. But basically, if you're weighing 14 days in a row and you're in a calorie deficit, or you think you are, then if you hit one day, you hit a new low. 1 out of 14 days, that's it. If 1 out of 14 days, even if you're up the other 13 days, if you hit a new low weight 1 out of the 14 days, then you can know you're making progress. So basically, if I'm mapping it all out like on a graph, which I don't do, but if I was looking at it on a graph, we put all these points in and we're going to see all these fluctuations, but over time, the trend line is going down. And the way that I like to look at it is basically pick the new low weight. Every time you hit a new low, like that's what I'm tracking. Everything else is just noise, okay? Everything else is just noise. It's data, okay? It's good to look at, but track, boom, new low, new low, new low. As long as you're hitting a new low every 2 weeks, even just 1 out of every 14 days, keep going. Deeper into the diet, or as you get deeper into the diet, or if you're a woman that has a lot of fluctuations in water weight, you probably know who you are. A lot of bloating and things like that, like you might want to drag this out to 3 to 4 weeks. And the thing is, once you see, I know it's frustrating because you're like, I want to see the progress, but it is what it is. But once we have enough data, once we have a few weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, if we see the scale go down, we hit a new low, all right, we've hit a new low, hit a new low, we can then say like, all right, we've lost 5 pounds over the last 4 weeks. We're ignoring what happens in week 1. So let's say between week 2 and so we go week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5. At the end of week 5, compared to the beginning of week 2, we're down 5 pounds. That means we're losing 1.25 pounds per week, which means, according to my math, we're in a 675 calorie deficit. 675 calorie deficit per day. So if we just keep hitting that number, you are going, and you stay consistent with your activity level. If you keep everything the same, you are going to continue to see fat loss go in a nice steady line. Here's the thing. Fat loss, assuming you're controlling the variables, you're reasonably consistent with your training, your exercise, your walking, your calorie deficit, etc. If you're consistent with those, fat loss is linear. It is consistent. Day after day after day, you're losing roughly the same amount of fat. Weight loss over the long haul, especially if you go like low to low to low, it is linear, but there's a lot of craziness here, okay? And it does make that noise. It's exactly what happens when we're losing weight. Kidding. But fat loss is linear. Weight loss is not in the short term, but in the long term, the weight loss will track exactly with the fat loss. Does that make sense? So the scale does show us fat loss. It's a great indicator of fat loss. But we want to track it daily, but then we want to pick out the lows because those are the data points we care about. And if 4 weeks are going by and you're not seeing a low, I'm going to talk about exceptions here. In almost all cases, you're probably not actually in a calorie deficit. All right. So what happens if one quick caveat. If you want to lose fat and start strength training, you can and should do both at the same time. Just know that, like, what happens we'll talk about this journey really quick. Like, once you've been lifting for a while, you've been lifting as long as I have, like, muscle gain is super, 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 super slow. So basically, as long as my strength is being maintained, the scale is very accurately telling me what's happening with my body composition. Whereas somebody who's starting out, let's say somebody's starting out, they're 160 pounds, they want to lose, they want to drop 20 pounds, but they also want to start strength training. Like, they are going to be building muscle. They're going to be adding tissue. Their body is adding tissue. So let's say they're in a calorie deficit, they're losing 1 pound per week. So they're losing 4 pounds a week. 4 pounds a month of fat. Well, let's say they start strength training. Let's say over 3 months, they've added 5 pounds of just a combination of new muscle tissue, water. Your muscles hold water. Your body stores carbohydrates in the muscle. As the muscles get bigger, they can store more carbs. You store carbs, you store more water with that. So let's say they've lost over 12 weeks. They add 5 pounds of lean tissue being anything that's not fat. So muscle, carbs, water, etc. And they add 5 pounds and then they drop 12 pounds because they're losing a pound per week of fat. The scale is only going to show a 7-pound drop, but they've actually lost more fat than that. So just know that if you are strength training, especially if you're getting started, because your rate of gain as a beginner is the highest, and then your rate of muscle gain slows down the longer that you've been training, okay? So especially those first few months, don't get too hung up on what the scale is saying. Still, work to create your calorie deficit, but just know that in your first several months, 3 months especially, but even 6 to 12 months, like, any weight you lose on the scale, if you started strength training in that year, you're losing more fat than the scale is telling. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, I want to talk to you about stalls, whooshes, and wine. So what happens when we lose fat, especially deeper into the diet, or if we're stressed or whatever? There's a whole host of reasons why this can happen. It would be nice if we woke up and every day the scale gave us exactly, it didn't fluctuate. It just gave us exactly, oh, you lost 0.1 pound yesterday or whatever. It would be nice if that happened, but that doesn't happen. One of the things that does happen, especially again, under stress, deep into the diet, etc., is as you lose fat is just fat cells, just it's energy. So your body's emptying the contents of the fat cell so that the body can use it for energy, because you're in a calorie deficit. So it's got to pull that energy from somewhere. So it pulls it from your fat. You empty the fat contents. And sometimes the body will refill those fat cells with water for a time. So you've legitimately lost the fat, and the water weight will always come out. But sometimes, especially under a lot of stress or deep into the diet, it doesn't come out for a long, long time. So there are times where, again, deep in the diet, under stress, etc., the weight on the scale doesn't move for weeks. 2 to 3 weeks is very common to see. So that's why we want to track, especially early on. We want to know, okay, I'm eating this amount of calories and this is how much fat I'm losing. If that's true, and you're consistently losing a pound per week, 3/4 of a pound per week, half pound per week, 1.5 pounds per week, whatever it is, if you're consistently losing that, inevitably you're going to get to a place where you stall because your body's dumping fat contents, and for whatever reason, the body's decided to fill those fat cells with water for a time. So you can be confident that even if you're stalled for 2 to 3 weeks, which is very common, sometimes upwards of 4 to 6 weeks in extreme cases, if you know you're hitting that same calorie deficit, your body did not all of a sudden hit a plateau. All right, let me say it again. You did not plateau. If you've been hitting the same amount of calories, same activity level that's been helping you lose weight consistently week after week, or mostly consistently week after week, you will not all of a sudden stall. It will not happen. I promise you. What's happening is you've got to stall. Or you've got to stall. Sorry, you've not hit a plateau. Your body didn't, like, your metabolism didn't freak out. You don't need to shock your body and switch it up. You don't need to do that. Just stay steady. The weight has hit a stall, but fat loss has not stalled. It is continuing. You will wake up one day, 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in, sometimes 4 to 5 weeks in. I had a period of, I think, 5 weeks where I didn't drop at all. And then, like, the scale dropped like 4 pounds one day. And then a few days later, it dropped like 3 more pounds. And I definitely did not lose 7 pounds during that 5-week period. It's just that the water weight finally decided to come off for whatever reason. We don't know why this happens. But if you find yourself in that situation and you've been dieting for a while consistently and you're losing fat, you've been losing fat consistently, and then you feel like you've plateaued, keep going. The weight will come off, and it's going to come off. We call it a whoosh. You're going to wake up the next day and then boom, the scale is going to be down way more than it normally would. Okay. Sometimes 3, 4, 5 pounds at a time. It's pretty wild to see. And you'll wake up looking noticeably different. And it's not that you lost all that fat overnight. It's just that the water weight that was being retained kind of masked the fat loss that had happened. And then the fat's gone, obviously. The water's replaced it. Then the water decides to be let go. And boom, you wake up significantly lighter and looking leaner. One thing that can help with this is alcohol, not margarita or a beer or anything like that that can potentially make you bloated, but a dry liquor or a dry red wine. If people, you don't need to do this, but psychologically it can be very helpful for people who are like starting to get really antsy. Once you've walked through a few of these whooshes, you recognize it and you're confident to keep going. But even though I'm telling you this, the first time you walk through it, you're going to be freaking out probably. So if you want, if it's enough for you, just go off of Nate's words, stay steady. The weight is going to whoosh. You're going to wake up and you're going to, this just happened for one of my clients I've been talking to every week, hopping on a quick phone call with him. He was stalled for a few weeks and then boom, he woke up like 3.5, 4 pounds lighter. It's pretty cool. It's fun to watch as a coach. But anyway, it's not fun to walk through when it's your first 1 or 2 times walking through that. So if it's enough, just have faith that what I'm telling you is true, because it is. But if not, you can try. This works in about 80 to 90% of cases. You can take 1 serving, so like 1.5 ounces or whatever the serving is on liquor, and then 5 ounces on a dry red wine. Take that, take it at night, and oftentimes alcohol, because it's a diuretic, will flush the extra water weight. Something to keep in mind. But if you do that and the whoosh happens, just know all the alcohol it didn't make you lose a bunch of weight. Alcohol is not the key to fat loss. It just was a diuretic that flushed the water weight that you're dealing with. All right. So over time, fat loss will slow down a little bit. Okay. At 260 pounds versus me at 229, I was burning a little bit more calories at 260 than I am at 230 because I was bigger. So I had more mass and my body needed more calories to keep my weight the same. So I've probably reduced my calorie intake by 100 to 150 calories per day. Just over the last few months, I've dropped my calories just a little bit. So as you lose weight, yeah, your body does adapt, but usually it's usually not even, most of the time it's not even an adaptation really. It's just you have less mass. There's less of you. So your body needs fewer calories to maintain you because there's less of you now because you've lost weight. But usually those adjustments are small. They're not like major drops in calories. So again, if you feel like you have just stalled all of a sudden, it's probably a whoosh. Or if it's going to be a whoosh if you know your habits have stayed consistent. But if your habits have not stayed consistent, then it's time to take a look in the mirror, relook at your habits and say, okay, am I doing everything that I was initially doing to be successful? That's the first thing I'm going to look at. But if you know for sure you haven't changed anything, then it's not a stall, it's a whoosh. Okay, a whoosh is coming. You're just dealing with some water retention, and the whoosh is coming. The whoosh is around the corner. It's going to be awesome. But if you've kind of slacked off, right, which happens a lot over long periods of time where people are dieting, it happens, just tighten back up, okay? All right, just know you're not the victim. You're in control. So don't act like a victim. Don't talk like it. Figure out what's going on. Are you doing everything right? Perfect. You're going to whoosh. Keep going. Are you not doing everything right? Well, start doing everything right again. I do think it can be helpful partially from a physiological body standpoint, but especially from a mental, psychological standpoint, to take a diet break. If you notice that you are having cravings, or you're a little more tired, or maybe your workouts aren't going as well, taking, a weekend, taking a few days, taking even, 1 to 2 weeks at a time, or even longer, a month or two, to eat at maintenance or maybe even slightly over. So to eat more calories, maybe even overeat a little bit. Maybe eat some more, fatty meats, some more carbohydrates that are going to help you recover. Psychologically and physiologically from your body, it can be very, very beneficial to take a little break and then get back to it. So in my time going from 260 to 229, I have had several weekends, like 4 to 5 weekends probably, and they're unplanned, but I'm just like, all right, I'm feeling really run down, I'm tired, I'm hungrier than usual, I've kind of got some cravings. I'll usually go get something that I want that sounds really good, and then I'll just eat at maintenance or maybe even overeat just a little bit, nothing crazy, nothing to like weigh, you got to be careful with this because you don't want to like blow your progress and just go hog wild. You shouldn't be doing that anyway. But I think that brings me to a place of like, or to a point of just saying your diet needs to be something that you could enjoy, that you could stick with, for the long haul. So the way that I'm eating currently on my diet, like obviously you can't be in a calorie deficit forever. So I'll add calories back in when I'm maintaining. But like I really enjoy how I'm eating. I'm not super hungry. I have great energy. Mental clarity is great. All that stuff. So, and then once I go to maintain, I just add some calories back in and I'm happy. But if you feel like you're dieting in a way that's super unsustainable, like you're probably going to go crazy at some point, and your body, you're fighting your body at that point. And it's going to fight back and give you cravings and make you want to go whatever, eat a bunch of Taco Bell and all that stuff. And it'll be very easy to regain the weight that you lost. It happens all the time. So that's why you need a plan that is practical, enjoyable, and sustainable so you don't feel deprived. Anyway, so eat at maintenance, maybe even a little bit higher. I usually will try to overeat just a little bit, and a few extra calories just to feel good. And usually within like 3 days, I'm good to go. And then there was one time I was feeling really fatigued. There's a lot of stress going on. Stress I was dealing with. And so I, took about 2 weeks to overeat, and just by a little bit. And yeah, just mentally and physically, it was a nice reset. And then I got back to dieting. So don't be afraid to take breaks. And the weekend breaks, like taking a few days, super, super helpful. Just make sure like you're still intentional with how you're eating. Like you're enjoying the food, you're relaxing a little bit around the diet, but you're not just like going crazy. Because you can absolutely wipe out a lot of progress in a few days if you let yourself. So yeah, diet breaks physically can be beneficial and also mentally. All right, and then the last thing is just switching to maintenance. So again, you should be eating in a way that you feel like you could largely eat that way the rest of your life. Again, you can't be in a calorie deficit. You're not gonna keep losing weight forever, because then you would just keep losing and then you would die. So that's not a good plan. But you do want to eat in a way where you're like, I just generally feel like this is a way of eating, a template. The meals that I'm eating, the food that I'm eating, etc., is like really, really enjoyable. When I go to add, my maintenance calories, to up my calories back to maintenance, maybe I add in a little dessert, maybe I do some fattier meats, some more carbohydrates, whatever, whatever floats your boat, maybe some more cheese on your food, whatever it is, right? So add some more calories back in, but your food, your dieting plan should be something that you could generally maintain on in terms of the food choices you're making. So let me just add some calories back to it and boom, that's it. So I do recommend being really intentional when you finish the diet. Don't just like totally relax. First, I would recommend if you have like a specific weight you want to get to, I would actually recommend getting 3 to 5 pounds lower than that. And then so then when you add food back in, the weight, just the same way you saw that big drop in the first week, you're going to see a big drop, or you'll see a big bump once you switch back to maintenance in that first week back at maintenance. And also, that's another thing to keep in mind with a diet break. When you take a diet break and you bump your calories back up, your scale will bump up. So it can mess you up for like a week or so on the scale. Don't get hung up on that. Just know you're adding in extra calories, extra food, extra salt, extra carbs. Your body's retaining more water. The scale's going to go up. That's okay. But yeah, you want to switch to maintenance, and then I would continue to monitor your food at maintenance for about 2 to 4 weeks. Make sure your body is settling in at that weight. Make sure you feel good with how you're eating, and you're not your body's not like, you're not super ravenous or anything like that. I would just make sure it's a smooth transition. Let your body maintain at that new weight. And there's this idea that like when you get to a new weight and maintain it for a month, a few months, and the longer you're at that weight, basically the better this is solidified. But your body will kind of reset its set point. So the body has like a set point. If you remember the word homeostasis from school, like the body wants to maintain homeostasis to keep things the same. And so, at first, when you first start dieting, your body's like, what's going on? Like, we want to stay at the same weight. But once you get to that new maintenance, the longer you can maintain that, the more your body will just like, it will stabilize. Your hormones will optimize around that weight, that body fat percentage, and the body will become more likely to just naturally want to maintain that through like hunger cues, energy, etc. So switching to maintenance, be intentional when you do that. Don't just like totally relax. You can't go back to eating how you were before. Like, don't go hog wild. You're just going to regain the weight. So you can't go back to that old person. Okay. You're this new person now with these new eating habits, which is also why it's important that like we learn and grow and develop and improve along the way, right? Adopting these, like learning things about our body and about fat loss and food, so that we have the tools and we've become the type of person who can maintain this new lean physique. And it's not just this flash in the pan, 4-week rapid fat loss plan. We need something that's sustainable. And then again, anyway, all I had to say, I would just encourage you to take the transition back to maintenance just as seriously as you took your fat loss, if not more seriously, so that you can keep the results that you've worked so hard for. That's it, guys. That is my comprehensive fat loss plan. If you will watch this, study this over and over, implement what I'm telling you, you will have probably all the tools that you need to lose fat and keep it off for life.